This is part 3 of an instructional series on how to design a timber frame in Fusion 360, recorded for the Yes Tomorrow Design Build School. In this part, I'm going to cover how to design braces that fit in our bent. So let's get started. So first, a quick review of where the model stands. We started in the first video by creating a master component and some master sketches that are within that component. So let's open up our sketch folder and see what we've got here. First, we created a post plan, which is basically just profiles of where all of the 16 posts exist. And then we did this sketch in the middle of the drawing, which allowed us to make basically a mass model. If I hide the sketch here, you can see it. And then the third sketch we did was a sketch of the first bent. So we're actually going to go back to that first sketch and add some geometry for our braces. So I'm going to double click on this bent sketch, and that will open up that sketch. So the way I like to define braces is by the size of the brace, the distance of the brace from the timbers that it joins. So let me show you what I mean by that. So we're going to have what I would call 3-foot braces. So I'm going to go up to the line tool, and I'm going to intersect on the bottom of this tie beam and then come down, and I want a 45-degree angle here. So I'm going to hit tab, type in 45. That's going to lock in our angle, and then I'm going to come down to the post, and you can see now we have a blue line. If I hit escape here, let's see how we can move that blue line. It is the endpoints of that line are coincident with the bottom of this tie beam and this side of the post. So as I try to move this, those 2 points stay there. They stay along those lines, which is great. That's exactly what we want. To show you the actual constraint, coincident constraints don't show up by default, but if you click on the point, you will see them. These are the coincident constraints, basically saying that this point is coincident with this line. And the same thing over here. If I click on this point, you'll see a coincidence here. Okay, so now how to lock this in. Basically, we want to set the distance from this point to here. So I hit D on my keyboard, and I'm going to come down here and type in 3 feet and press enter. And now you see that our sketch got black. It is fully constrained. So that is basically the outer portion of the brace. Now our brace timber is actually 4 by 6. So I need to get another line here. So I press L for line. And I'm just going to put this somewhere off in space and actually make it, well, you know what? I guess I'm going to go ahead and intersect this line. Why not? Okay, so I'm going to intersect here, and I'm going to intersect here, and I'm also going to tab over and do 45. So very much like the first line we drew, it is coincident with the beam and the post. But we do not have a dimension here. So press D for dimension, click on these 2 lines, and then type in 6. And now everything is fully constrained. But you can see we don't have well, actually we do have a profile. Okay, so we can extrude that now. So I'm going to finish the sketch. And now when we extrude, we want to create a body that is within a brace component. So there's a couple different ways we can do that. We can pre-create the component, or when we do the extrude, we can let the extrude command create the component. But either way, we have to get the active component proper. We have to activate the proper component, I should say, so that it ends up in the proper spot here. So let's do the first approach where the extrude will create the component. So I'm going to activate my bent component, and I want a brace that's within there. So if I hit E for extrude, first thing I'll probably do is come down here and create a new component. Okay, so now I can click on the profile. One profile is selected, and you can see the extrude arrow is going away from me. So now I'm going to have to push it this way, so that's going to be a negative distance. So I want to, when I type in the dimension, I want to make sure I preserve that negative. So -4 inches. Okay. Now that's created a component here, and it's named it component 10. So I'm going to come in and click on that and just call this, I'm actually going to call this bent brace, because we're going to have some wall braces that are a different dimension. Okay, so there's our bent brace component. Now we're going to use that same component and copy it for the other, let's see, 2, 4, the other 5 braces in this bent. But first, let's go ahead and do the joinery for this one brace, and then we'll get that joinery in all of the other components. So I want to activate my bent brace component now, and this is, typical square method where we're going to extrude this brace into the post and into the beam by 1/2 inch. So let's start by doing that. I'm going to hide post 1A, and I'm going to hide my tie beam 1AB, and I'm also going to hide the whole master component to get rid of that sketch. Okay, so if I just click on this surface, I can go ahead and extrude it. So I press E and then type in 1/2 inch. And I'm going to do that on the other end of the brace as well. Press E and then type in 1/2 inch. Okay, so now if we turn on our post and turn on our tie beam, we should see that the brace is essentially eating into those 2 timbers. But you can see it's actually got some extra material there that isn't going to exist. So we're going to cut that off next. So I'm going to hide the post and hide the tie beam. Okay, so I can cut that all at once by creating a sketch here and making a line all the way down here. So let me go ahead and do that. I'm going to open up my bent brace component here to see what's going on. We have this single body, which is our brace. And now we're going to create a sketch. So I'm going to pre-select by clicking on this surface, go to create sketch, and now I'm going to press L for line, and as long as I pay attention to what's going on there, I can get a 45-degree angle there. And oops, I got a little too quick with the line command here, so I'm going to click. And okay, so I'm going to tab over and put in 135 degrees to lock that angle in, and then click there. Okay, so now I should be able to do an extrude on both of those at the same time. So I'm going to finish my sketch, and I'm going to hit E for extrude, and I'm going to click on this profile, and then orbit up here and click on this profile, and our arrow is going in this direction. So if I push it back, you can see that the operation automatically goes to cut, which is what I want. And instead of putting a distance in here, I can select all. So that's going to cut it all the way. Okay, so now let's go to our sketches, and we're going to have a few sketches here. So I'm going to name this one, and I'll just call this cut. We cut those little tabs off. Okay, so now let's go ahead and make some tenons. So I'm going to click on this surface. We're still in the bent brace component, And I'm going to create a sketch. And now all I really need to do is draw a line down the center here, because this is 4 inches in depth and I want a 2-inch tenon, so I'm kind of just drawing a dividing line. And then E for extrude, click on the surface I want to extrude, and then type in, let's say this is going to be 3 inches deep, so a 3-inch tenon. Okay. And we'll do the same up here. So I'll click here, create a sketch, get my line tool, make sure I'm in the middle of this profile, in the middle there, and then I can hit E for extrude. One thing you might notice is I didn't even finish the sketch there. I just pressed E, the shortcut key for extrude, and that finished the sketch and got me into the extrude command. Okay, so I've got the profile selected. I can come up 3 inches. Okay. Now, we also have some extra material here. So we want a line here to cut that off. So we need yet another sketch. So let's see. Let's name our sketches here. So this was the bottom tenon. So I'm going to just call this tenon 1. And this was the top tenon. I'll call this tenon 2. Okay. So now we're going to do a sketch on the tenon to cut this extra material off. So again, I like to pre-select, go to create sketch, and now I can get my line tool and tab over to the angle, put in 135, so that locks in the angle, and then click here. And since we're in this sketch, we need another sketch essentially, but it's in the same plane here. So why not use the sketch we're in? So let's see. We've got our 135 angle here. Let me hit L for line. And I'm trying to intersect here, but I'm not getting it. So this is where auto project comes in. If I look straight at this component, let me zoom out, I kind of lost it there. Okay, now we're getting this auto projection. I can intersect this point, whereas if I'm right here, I can't seem to get an intersection going. Actually, I can. That's interesting. All right, but I'm not getting this projection here where I'm not getting this vertical line. So again, I'm going to do a look at. I'm still in the sketch, and I'm going to come over here, hit L for line, and now I'm able to do the angle that I want. It's 45, and I want to intersect this line. Okay, so now I can finish the sketch, and now we should be able to hover over those two areas and extrude. Now for some reason I'm not getting a profile here. I'm not really sure what's going on there. So I'm actually going to undo this sketch and try it on the back side. So I'm just pressing Control Z until I see this sketch go away in the browser. And I'm going to come around to the back side and do these cuts. So I'll pre-select the back of the brace, go up to create sketch, hit L for line, and get my 45-degree angle and also get my intersection there. And I'm just going to check while I'm in the sketch that I'm able to select the profile, and there it is. Now this is the side we had a problem with. So L for line, get the intersection there, and I've got my 135 angle. I'm going to click and hit escape, and I get the profile there. Okay, so we're in the sketch, and then I'll just show you. I'm going to press E, which is going to finish the sketch and go to extrude all in one. So a little bit of a time saving there. So in extrude, I'm picking two profiles, which show up here in the dialog box, and then I'm going to move it in this direction. Fusion's going to figure out, okay, you want to cut it, and then I'm going to do a distance of all which is cutting all the way through the body. And I'll click OK. So now if we hide all of our sketches, well, let me back up a second. Let's go ahead and name this cut 2. Okay. So now if we hide all our sketches, you can see that that is a legitimate brace with its joinery. Okay, so let's turn our post and our tie beam on. All right. So now all we have to do is reproduce that, and we'll be done with our braces. So all of the braces in this bent are going to be identical. Even the ones going in a different angle, it's simply, turning this brace at 90 degrees, and all of the joinery is the same. So instead of making unique components, we want to make an identical copy of a component, and then if we change one, we end up changing all of them. So that's what you see with this :1 at the end of all of these components. It's saying that this is the first instance of this component, and each one of them just have a 1 on it. Now that when we start reproducing these braces, you'll see that they'll have 2, 3, 4, etc. So we have created this first bent brace component, and now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to, I don't want 6 more components here in my bent. I think what I'm going to do is go up to bent 1 and create a component and call this braces. And I'm actually going to call this braces 1. So this component will have all of the braces in bent 1. So that's what the 1 means on there. Okay. And I'm going to take this bent brace component, and drag this into the braces component. So now if I open up braces, you'll see that bent brace 1 is inside there. So all of these 6 braces that we're about to create are going to be inside braces, so that we can turn all the braces off at once, which will be convenient, and we don't clutter our browser too much here. Okay, so what we're going to do is use copy and paste, which will recreate instances of a component. So first we're going to highlight the component. I have not activated it. This is the active component, the higher level one. And I'm going to come up to copy, and then I can right click on this braces and do a paste. So now in the browser you'll see that we have bent brace with a 2 on the end of it. So identical copy, but another instance of it. So now we're in move copy, we're moving or copying components, and now I can take these arrows and start sliding this around. So the first thing I'm going to do is to actually rotate this 90 degrees and lock right in there on 90. So now I've got to locate this accurately in our frame, and I don't really want to figure out the distance. I'd rather just have Fusion figure it out. So one way that I came up with doing this is to actually set this pivot point. If we set that to this point right here and then move that point to this surface, we don't have to type in any dimensions at all. So we have to reset the pivot point, which Fusion always sets in the middle of a component when you do a move like this or copy. So I can either click here or here to reset the pivot. And now you'll see as I move my mouse around, this pivot gets moved around. So I'm going to zoom in here. I don't want this point. I actually want this point right here. That's what's going to align with the side of that post. So I'm going to click. Now here's the weird part. You're not done setting the pivot yet until you click this green check mark, which exists here and here, either one. They're both the same. So I guess I guess the rationale behind having to finalize this is you could actually, move this and offset this wherever you want, and then finalize this. So this is something that burns me all the time. So I'll show you. I'm going to set my pivot to where I want it, and then click the green check mark. All right, so now that that's done, when I start moving this towards the timber, I can simply come over here to the side of the post, and this pivot point got aligned with the side of the post. So that's exactly where I want it. All right. So now we have two. Let's look over here in our browser. We have two copies of an identical component. So I'm going to do that again. I'm going to click on this, do a copy, and then I can just use my keyboard here too. I can do Control V to paste. And I'm going to start moving this one out. And here I have to move this in two directions. I don't ever want to use this because this is going to allow us to freeform this little square, to freeform move. I want to use the arrows so that I'm always in this horizontal axis, so that I don't have to relocate a position here. But I want to bring this into this face. So again, I'm going to have to set the pivot. I'm going to zoom in here and set it on this point. You can see it gets a little difficult. I don't want those arrows on an angle like that. So let's see if we zoom in a little bit more, if we can orient. This is the way I want it oriented. Oh. Now, I guess I can click here and bring this pivot down to where I want it to be. I'm just not sure what angle I want to set that at. I guess 45 should give it to me. Okay. So there's a reason why this check mark exists. That was much easier than trying to fumble around and get the pivot arrow in the right plane. So I'm going to say, okay, I am done now with my pivot. And now I can start using this arrow, which is going to move it horizontally, and then click on the side of the post. And it embedded that, ½ inch into the post. So I'll click OK. Oops. So actually what I should have done is done a second move right there to move it up to the tie beam. But I can still select it here, just click on it, do an M for move, and now, same exercise. I don't want to use the pivot here. I want to reset the pivot to this point right here. And now I'm getting an up pointing arrow. I click on my green check mark, and I can just start using this arrow and then click on this surface right here. Okay. All right, so we have the third one done. Now I'm going to actually use this, this is in the right orientation. So I'm going to click on the second brace here and do a Control C, Control V, and start moving this horizontally. Set my pivot to right there. Move this. Oops. Now here's where I've screwed up, and I didn't do my green check mark. I knew I was going to do that at some point here. So I'm just going to redo the pivot again after doing the green check mark. So click here. Make sure that I finish the pivot. Start moving this excuse me, horizontally, and then click on the side of the post. Now, I don't have to do an OK here. I can do a second move. But the pivot is not set to where we want it. If I left the pivot here and clicked on this face, you can see the pivot got aligned with that face. So let me pull that back down, reset our pivot to be right here. Click on the check mark and move upward and select that. Oops. So you can see that I didn't get the pivot in the right spot. Okay, so I'm going to reset the pivot again. You can see I need a little practice in pivot setting here. Okay. And that's where we want it, but I'm going to rotate this so my arrow would be upright. So I want 45 degrees. Hit the check mark. Now I can go upward and click on this face and do an OK. All right, so there's 4 of them, 2 more to go. I'm going to pick this one. So the first one, Control C, Control V, move this over here, set our pivot. It's a little tricky getting this pivot in the right spot, but okay, my arrows are not up, so I'm going to go to 45 degrees, type in -45, and then click on the green check mark, and then move it horizontally, select that surface that is embedded by 1/2 inch. And since we started from this right-hand part of the bent, I don't have to do a vertical move here, so I can just do an OK. So I will click on this guy, do a Control C, Control V. Didn't get it. Let's see, try that again. Click on brace 2 in the browser, Control C, Control V. There it is. Start moving our copy, set our pivot to the proper spot right there. Hit the check mark, and we should be able to use this arrow now. And there it is. Okay, so let's look and see what we got. Inside our braces 1 component, which means braces in our first bent, we have 6 identical copies of the first brace that we made. So the advantage here is that if we were to change joinery, let's say we want to go to a 4-inch tenon, we could go to any one of these, activate it, open it up, take a look at the sketch, and let's say we go to tenon 1. I'm going to double click on that sketch to edit it. And actually, we don't want to change the sketch, we just want to change the extrude. So let me go back to bent 1 to bent brace, activate that component, and let's see, this extrude is probably the extrude. Oh no, that's our cut. Okay, let's see, where is our extrude? I'm going to right click here, and okay, so this is our 3-inch tenon. Let me set that to 4 inches. Okay, so now I'm going to hide, let's hide all of the posts and all of the ties so we can just look at our 6 braces. Oops. Okay, and I'm going to hide the sketch that I was just working on. Okay, so now you can see that if I click on this line, it's 4 inches. Now this should be, if we go to this guy, this should be 4 inches as well. And over here, this one should be 4 inches as well. Now these guys would be 4 inches over here because they got rotated. So I didn't change the tenon on both sides, I just changed it on one side. But basically I'm trying to illustrate that because these are identical components, you just change one and you get them all changed. So I'm going to undo back to where we're going to get, oops, there we go, to our original tenon size. Okay, so let's clean up a little bit. I'm going to turn on all of our timbers in the bent. And I've also got all the braces turned on. So now I'm going to collapse this and I can just hide and show all braces at once, which is most likely what you want to do while you're modeling. So just in review here, we made a single brace, this one here, did the joinery on it. Then we made kind of a master brace component. We dragged that bent brace into it and then reproduced it 5 more times and used our pivot to set those braces in the right spot to get our braces. So at this point, we're pretty much all set and ready to add joinery, or add mortises to the first bent, and we'll do that in the next video. But one last thing I want to do here in this video, you may have noticed that the grain direction in these braces is not right. We want our grain going along the long axis of our timber. So this is also another advantage of having identical copies of this brace. We can fix this in the first brace and all the other braces will follow along. So in order to fix this, I'm going to right click on this surface and I'm going to go to Texture Map Controls, and now I've got a pivot here, and if I pivot this to 45 degrees, you can see the grain direction is now proper. And if you look over here in the other 5 braces, you can see it's fixed in all of those. So I'm going to do an OK, and we solved that little problem.